by the time we get back to potential output and full employment later in the decade.
Mr. Rokita.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Elmendorf, welcome. Thank you for being here. You and I always seem to talk about this time in the day. Part of being a new member that has a last name that begins with the letter R.
Too, if you want. I'm happy to be here.
I heard your testimony with the chairman when you had a discussion about unsustainability, and I heard you to say it's not Medicare, and I want to clear this up because this was my impression. It's not Medicare that's causing the unsustainability. We have a mix of policies that need to be worked on.
Yes, I said what made the alternative fiscal scenario unsustainable in the long run is the combination of policies. It is the growth, certainly, of Medicare, other federal health programs, and Social Security.
So I just want to
set against taxes that remain close to their historical average share.
So I want to be clear, for the record, for my own understanding, for the American people, that you are not saying that we don't have to reform Medicare, or are you? If we were to adjust all the other parts of that mix and not touch Medicare, is this country okay in the long run?
So in our projections from last summer for 2035, we have Medicare being about 2% of GDP larger than it is today. So that alone can be accommodated through other changes in policy. I don't think Medicare has to be changed over the next 25 years that we focus on here, but something has to be changed from current policies. And there are, I mean, again, I'm not recommending that we leave it alone.
So seniors going on Medicare now might use it for the next 25 years, so I need a longer-term view than that. I want to talk about my 2-year-old, my 4-year-old. I want to talk about their kids.
Well, gentlemen, yield for a second. So just looking at the CBO's long-term budget outlook, to answer your question, because we have it right here, Medicare, Medicaid, the health care entitlements, plus the interest on debt at that time will equal federal revenues. That means no other program in the federal government outside of the health care programs and the interest on the debt will be paid for by any revenues in 2034.
That's right. But as you know, the debt service that we're paying at that point arises from the combination of policies we've had in the the intervening years. So again, I think it is a judgment that you all need to make about whether you want to have a country with the historical levels of revenues and changes in Social Security and Medicare programs to come down to that level, or the programs as they're currently structured and increases in revenues to come up to that level, or some combination.
I just think when you're talking about a program.
No, go ahead.
I just think when you're talking about a program that is going to be 14% of GDP and has no interest in plateauing from there, it's going to keep going and going. You have got to, if you're going to have an honest discussion with us, the American people, understand that this is part of the centerpiece, perhaps, of the problem.
Again, Congressman, I think I've been very clear here and many other times that it is the aging of the population and the rising cost of health care that is putting this unbelievable pressure on the federal budget. But there are different ways to respond to that, and it's not our place to endorse or.
Yeah, but I understand that you said that a few times too. But when you say mix of current policies, you're endorsing something. You are saying, that's what I want to be clear about, that Medicare reform is part of this mix and that it has to be reformed or not. So that's what I want to get to.
Right. So I don't think that one can say that any single piece has to be reformed. It is the combination of policies.
All right. Well, that's on record. All right.
Can't be pursued.
Let me go here. When Ms. Kasher was asking you some questions about growing out of this deficit, I want to be clear for the record that you mean to say that we can have policies that create growth, whatever we agree them to be, that can help reduce the deficit. That has nothing to do with reducing the debt. By definition, if you don't wipe out the deficit year to year, you can't start attacking the debt. So you cannot grow your way out of the debt we're in and the debt that's coming down the road alone. You cannot grow just by growing the economy, all of the dials not touched. You cannot grow your way out of this debt.
So in a
first world mature economy,
in our baseline, our current law projections, debt continues to rise because we continue to have deficits, as you're saying. It falls slowly relative to GDP because the debt is rising more slowly than GDP. by the second half of the decade under these current law
But if you're not eliminating the deficit, you are not reducing the debt.
You're not reducing
Right,
the dollar
okay.
value of the debt.
And so growth alone will not do this. Regarding the extended payroll tax cut, I understood that the cost of the tax cut, if extended this year, will be about $100 billion. And you indicated that that is better for the near-term economy than the Bush tax cuts? Or
That dollar for dollar.
dollar for dollar?
That we
That's not
estimate that a payroll tax,
Okay.
lower payroll taxes has a stronger stimulative effect
Okay.
than a broad-based.
And you also would agree then that that $100 billion has to be paid for by future generations?
Yes, since we're already on
For our
a
near-term
path.
economic bump, other future generations need to pay for that.
Well, or this
Right.
generation a few years later, but yes, it has to be paid for by somebody.
Right.
Yes.
With the small amount of time I have left, John Maynard Keynes, what do you believe he got right, and what do you believe what don't you subscribe to?
I think it is a widespread view among macroeconomists today that over the medium or long run, economies are we would call classical or neoclassical, so that the constraint on output and incomes is the supply of the factors of production, labor supply, saving, and so on. But also, I think, a view of most economists who are thinking about business cycles is that in the short term, then a very important determinant of the level of output and the level of employment is the demand for goods and services. And that is, at its heart, a Keynesian idea. The actual models we use, the way this is structured, has evolved a tremendous amount in the 75 years since
Evolves
Keynes
a
wrote
good word
about
for it.
that. But that view that in the short run, the economy has what people think of as Keynesian properties, and in the medium and long run, it doesn't have those Keynesian properties. That's, I think, a consensus view that you'll find in leading textbooks. Not everybody shares it. I don't want to say that. But I think it is a consensus view that you'll find in leading textbooks and a lot of the writings of people over the past few years with a range of political views and a range of views about whether the right way to proceed in the country is to change taxes or spending and so on.
And my time's expired. Thank you. And I will call the office from time to time.
Please do.
Thank you. Mr. Woodall.